Hello, Donna Hill. Thank you so much for tuning in. All right, it's about 1 o'clock on Sunday, so we are going to go ahead and start the next episode of Hollywood Kitchen. So thank you all for tuning in and joining me. I'm going to try to make a couple of items that do not involve the use of my stove, because every time I use that stove over there, this entire apartment is like 350 degrees. So I thought Boris Karloff's guacamole would be an excellent alternative, not to mention a general crowd pleaser. So who doesn't like guacamole, right? And first off, we're going to make the guacamole, and then, while I'm stuffing my face, we're also going to talk about Boris's career and his life, and I'll even recommend some books to you. So welcome and thank you for joining me. All right, the recipe comes to me. I actually found this one on the internet. It's pretty much all over the place on the internet. And somebody told me that this was a scan that Forrest Ackerman scanned out of a scrapbook. So it makes me really happy knowing that this has to do with Forrest Ackerman, because he truly influenced so many people with his famous Monsters of Filmland magazine. It may surprise many that Boris Karloff liked guacamole, because he is, after all, the urbane Englishman, and we don't think of him as being a Mexican food kind of guy. But it's totally plausible that he fell in love with the cuisine. After all, he came from England to Los Angeles in the teens. So it's definitely possible that he really did love guacamole. So we're going to make this today. And here are the ingredients we're going to need. We have 2 avocados, which I have already peeled, 1 medium-sized chopped tomato, a minced onion. I minced as best I could. A can, some green chilies, lemon juice, and a dash of cayenne pepper. Now, if you've looked at Boris's article, you may notice there is one ingredient I have left out here, and that is sherry. Now, when I was getting ready to do this episode, I was in the grocery store, and the only bottle of sherry they had was like $7, and it was huge, and I just didn't see the point in buying all that sherry just for this project. So I texted a friend asking to borrow cooking sherry, and she asked what I needed it for, and I said guacamole, and she said, "Are you insane? What's wrong with you?" And I said, "No, it's this Boris Karloff recipe." And she said, "No, that's ridiculous. There's no way sherry belongs in guacamole." And I said, "Well, it's what Boris, and he's also from England, so maybe things are different there." And she said, "No, it has nothing to do with being English. It's just crazy to put sherry in guacamole." So I'm going to go ahead and leave off the sherry, and if you want to put it in yours, if you're making it along with me or you plan to, go for it and let me know how that works out for you. But as I said on the Katharine Hepburn Brownie episode, I'm a fan of just you being you. So do what works for you. And some people that have made celebrity recipes on Twitter warned me this week that some people get very upset if I don't follow the historic recipe to the letter. All I have to say is there are much bigger things in the world to get upset about. And again, everybody's palate is different, taste buds, allergies, times have certainly changed since a lot of these recipes were made. So again, I'm a little more freewheeling, and I'm just all for whatever works for you. So, okay. I like recipes where you just dump everything in a bowl, because as someone pretty new to cooking, it is really hard to screw that up. So it's a successful thing for me. Okay, so we're going to put the avocados in a bowl here, the diced tomatoes, the onions, the green chilies. It's probably going to loosen up my sinuses here. The lemon, and the cayenne pepper. Okay. Now we're gonna do the monster mash. We're gonna mash all this up together here and see how this goes. Wow, this avocado is a little harder than I thought it would be. So, yeah. Okay. Excuse me just a second. I'm gonna go grab a fork. This clearly needs a fork to help me mash it up properly. And while I'm doing this, we're going to talk about Boris's films. Boris was born in London in 1887. He was the 9th child of a family. He was the youngest, of course. And his mom died very suddenly, so he was raised basically by his siblings. And he fell in love with theater and acting at an early age. He saw a production of Peter Pan and was enchanted by it and wanted to become an actor. So he came to Canada, where he changed his name from William Henry Pratt, which is his original name, to Boris Karloff. He never legally changed it, by the way. He just changed it for the stage. And he became a stage actor. He came to Los Angeles in the teens, and by the way, his first credited silent film role, I believe, is actually going to be the film they screen later tonight for The Silence Under the Stars. It's called, I believe, The Deadlier Sex. In any case, Boris Karloff worked for a long time in Hollywood, and he worked as a bit player, an extra, and if you've ever seen Kevin Brownlow's documentary on Universal Horror, there's a wonderful story in this documentary that his daughter Sarah Karloff tells. It's that Karloff met Lon Chaney on the set of one of these silent films that Lon was starring in and Boris was in, that they started talking, and Lon wound up giving Boris a ride home. And while they were talking, Boris was asking him for advice, which I love the idea of two horror icons carpooling. But anyway, and Lon Chaney told him, he said, do something that no one else can do, and do it better than anyone else could do it. And so Boris continued to toil as an extra and bit player, but he started to get to more important roles. And then in early 1930s, he was in a pre-code by Howard Hawks called The Criminal Code, which definitely got him a lot of notice. And a chance meeting with English director James Whale would change Boris's life forever. And he was cast as Frankenstein's monster in the film Frankenstein, which would secure Boris Karloff's place in film history. And it's an incredible film, it's an incredible performance, and it really is like a silent film performance because Boris doesn't have dialogue in that movie. The entire performance is done with his body and with his eyes. And he really gives the monster a sense of pathos and a real soul, and that completely comes across in the film. The film was a complete smash, and Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi both kind of became successors to Lon Chaney, who died sadly in 1930. And many horror hits followed for Boris, including The Old Dark House, The Mummy, and he made 8 films with Bela Lugosi. Much was sort of made that they were big horror rivals, but from what I've read, they really actually liked each other and had a lot of mutual respect for each other at the end of the day. And Boris, at one point, left film for a bit to go on the stage on Broadway and starred in the Broadway smash Arsenic and Old Lace. And he came back to Hollywood, and one of his most beloved roles was as the voice of the Grinch in The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. And I was lucky enough a couple of years ago in Los Angeles, a theater here in LA, a historic theater, screened a 35mm print of Bride of Frankenstein. And I went, and I got to meet Boris Karloff's daughter, Sarah Karloff. She was born in 1938, and she appears frequently at screenings, horror conventions, events, and she's done so much to keep Boris Karloff's legacy alive. I got to chat with her privately a little bit before the film. It was great. And she said he was very, very modest, and he never really talked about his work at home. It was just basically a job. And that when he did The Grinch, he called her and he said, I've got something kind of special on TV tonight, you should watch it. And she said that was the only time she really ever heard him talk about his film roles or his work in the industry. Also, Boris was a champion of actors because when he made Frankenstein, he had to sit for hours on end, about 4 hours a day, with makeup artist Jack Pierce to get the Frankenstein makeup on. And it was a grueling process, very physically punishing on his body. He had a lot of back problems, so it was very rough. And he was very aware of the toll these sort of roles took on actors. So Boris was instrumental in helping found the Screen Actors Guild. And he was very supportive of actors and artists' rights. And off-screen, Boris loved gardening, he loved playing cricket, and he was a very distinguished British gentleman. And he loved working. He continued to work right up until the end of his life. And he died in 1969 in England at the age of 81. And he is interred at the Guildford Crematorium in Surrey, England. So, I think I've mashed this up rather sufficiently. So now I'm going to taste it. Let me show the camera so you can see what it basically looks like. Not that you all don't know what guacamole looks like, but here you go. Okay. Is anyone out there making this along with me? If you are, let me know. Post a picture. Tell me what your favorite Boris Karloff film is. Okay. It's good. It's good. It's not nearly as spicy as what we would do today in today's world. Today we'd probably have it a lot spicier, and there'd be cilantro in it as well. But I still think it works. I've done this a couple of times as a test this week leading up to today, and I wound up using it as a sandwich spread, so it actually works pretty well for that as well. So if anybody has any questions or wants to chat about Boris, please leave a comment. And I'm happy to do so. Oh, I forgot to add the dash of salt and pepper to this, which, by the way, I have little Tombstone salt and pepper shakers. And if you're interested in more goth recipes and goth cooking, there are two ladies I totally fangirl over, and I would love to recommend them both to you. The first one is the Homicidal Homemaker. She's on YouTube. She's on the internet. She's amazing. She makes dishes that I couldn't even begin to dream about making. They're so complicated, intricate, and incredible. I recommend her. I also recommend Christine McConnell. She had a show on Netflix for a while, and she also does incredible cooking. And last fall, I was very lucky to see this. She did a giant gingerbread recreation of the notorious Winchester House in Northern California, and I got to see that. So if you want to see more goth excellence in the kitchen, those two ladies are amazing, and you cannot go wrong. Also, for possible future Hollywood Kitchen episodes, I wanted to point you out that there are some unique cookbooks out there that really specialize in certain star genres. For example, there is a cowboy cookbook that's just Western star recipes. And I was lucky enough to find this one. It came from the kitchen. It is a book that's all about science fiction and horror stars' favorite recipes. There are offerings in here from Lon Chaney Jr., Rod Serling, Bela Lugosi, tons of people. It's got little stories, information, and it's really interesting. So if you are interested in this, in cooking, this book. Another book I would also like to recommend to you, David J. Skall. He is a historian and an incredible one at that. Really specializes in the horror genre. He has a new book coming out this fall about horror films. And of course, my friend and mentor, Mark Vieira. He has a terrific book that came out a few years back. I don't know if it's still in print. I hope it is. It's called Hollywood Horror, From Gothic to Cosmic. And this is a photo caption book. It's got incredible insights into these movies as well, including Boris Karloff talking about his acting technique. So I highly recommend this book too. So if you have any questions or comments about Boris, please feel free to leave them in the comments section. I'm happy to answer them. And thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully there will be more recipes and more fun to come here in Hollywood Kitchen.